What would you do if you were not afraid? Would you start a business? Would you write a book? Would you pursue a different career? Would you leave that situation that you've outgrown? Or would you finally put yourself out there for the whole world to see? But here's an even harder question for you. What is your fear costing you? Because fear can be expensive. In my life, fear cost me a lot. Most people who know me wouldn't even guess that I used to have a pretty noticeable stutter. And because I didn't want to stutter in front of people, there were so many things that I just would not allow myself to do. But I am so glad that I overcame this fear of speaking in front of people. And today, I want to show you how to stop letting fear make your decisions so you can finally move forward to the life you really want. So as a child, my stutter was pretty noticeable. And when you're at elementary school, kids can be cruel even if they don't know it. So if it's time to read out loud and a person is stuttering, a first grader, second, third grader, they think it's funny. But if you're the one that's being laughed at, you don't find it to be funny at all. I remember having to be pulled from class to go to speech therapy. I remember not wanting to read in front of other people. The interesting thing is I really love learning and I really love reading, and I believe I'm a natural teacher and a natural leader. However, if a person is afraid to speak, then they cannot do those things that they were created to do. In 7th grade, I had a horrible experience where I had to do an oral book report. It should have been easy for me because I read much more than most of my peers. I read the book, I did the outline, I had perfect notes. I stood in front of the class and I stuttered and I stammered and I could not get anything out. I don't even know if I ever said the title. The teacher was horrible, let's just put it that way. And I failed. I believe I got a 0. I actually gave my outline to my locker partner who had never read the book, but she just went forth and she got an A. Did I learn what I was supposed to learn in that class? No. What I learned was that I should not be speaking in front of people. So when the opportunity came up to run for student council, at first I thought, absolutely, I was made for student council. But then I found out that we had to say a speech over the PA. What did I do? I thought back to elementary school with the kids laughing. I thought about standing in front of my class, stuttering and stammering with that book report, getting a 0. And I thought, what's the use? I did not want to get up and embarrass myself. And me allowing this fear to control me lasted for many years. There were certain opportunities that I declined. And the worst part is that if I were afraid, then I would stutter even more. I remember my first job out of college. I led a meeting and I stuttered the whole meeting. I was able to get through it, but then I found myself not even wanting to be in management or in a position where I had to lead meetings. And just like with the book report, I knew the material, I was capable, but the fear was holding me back. And I found myself not applying for certain positions. I found myself just kind of playing small so that I wouldn't get embarrassed. How many times have you been qualified but afraid? So you didn't even apply. You didn't even run for office. You didn't even try. How many opportunities have you let pass you by because you were convinced that you simply didn't have what it took to do the job? That you would just sit on the sidelines and let somebody else do it. And then when you watched the other person do it, you knew that you could have done the job just as good, if not better. So fear doesn't mean that you can't do the job. However, fear will try to convince you that you cannot do the job. When I look back at my life, the hardest thing wasn't that I had difficulty speaking. The really hard thing was the fear that had been associated with it. And I started to see myself as someone who stuttered, as someone who had this speech issue that would keep her from doing the things that she wanted to do. So this fear of speaking in front of people just kind of played into my fear of being seen, where I didn't want to interact with new people. I definitely didn't want to get on stage and talk or anything. And then you can get to a point where you just say, this is who I am, and I will never be able to do these other things. So as I think about what happened in 7th grade with the book report, that one incident really shaped the way I felt about public speaking. I just want you to reflect. What are some of the things that you have started to believe about yourself based on the experiences that you've had? Maybe because of a teacher or a parent, someone in a third grade, or maybe even your peers. Just think about that, because when it comes to breaking old patterns or really looking at limiting beliefs, the first step is awareness. Because sometimes we think that's just the way I am, but in actuality, there was a moment in time when things changed. And when you can go back and you can see that this is where the pattern came from, and then it's easier to say, oh, that's not me, but that was how I responded. I was in survival mode. And survival for me as a child meant if I didn't want to get laughed at, if I didn't want to fail, then I needed to remain quiet. And oftentimes fear will cause you to play small or to shrink. Maybe you don't even want people looking at you. Because fear doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. It looks like being a perfectionist, because maybe you're afraid of what will happen if you don't do everything exactly right. Sometimes it looks like just keeping quiet even though you know the answer, or keeping quiet when someone has crossed the boundary. Sometimes it looks like people pleasing or possibly overthinking. It can look like waiting till you're 100% ready, or asking the opinion of 5,000 people before you do anything. And sometimes fear will cause you to shrink so that other people can feel comfortable. And before you know it, you have spent years making yourself smaller. So back to the original question. What are some of the things that your fear has cost you? Has it cost you your opportunities, relationships, money, promotions, experiences? Has it cost you your purpose? I believe that each one of us was created by God for a purpose. But if we operate in fear, then we will never maximize our potential and we will never fulfill our purpose. Has your fear cost you your voice? Are you afraid to speak up? Were you created to speak to the nation, to speak to your community, but fear is holding you back? So when you think about it, there's a cost that comes with courage, but there's also a cost that comes with operating in fear. And then we just have to decide which cost, which price that we're willing to pay. So let's fast forward some decades. I am no longer in 7th grade. I am no longer sitting in a reading circle. I have my own YouTube channel. Some years back, I was a co-host on a radio program. I've had my own classroom for years. I've been in management. I've spent a lot of time speaking in front of people. Even as I'm speaking to you, I think it's pretty ironic that the person who was in tears after the book report, knowing I had failed, I knew I had messed up the A in that class, that I'm able to speak before you now. So even now when I turn on the camera, or maybe if I'm meeting someone new, that same fear tries to rise up. And sometimes the words don't come out as smoothly as I would want them to. But I am so thankful that I'm able to keep speaking and saying what I need to say, and I do not run away. So what if I stutter a little bit or stammer a little bit there? I will not be quiet. I will not silence myself. I will not let fear make my decisions. One thing that's really important to know, that courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. Because if you're not afraid a little bit, you don't even need courage. I don't need courage to walk into my bedroom. However, if I needed to protect someone and enter a room where there was danger, then yes, I would need courage for that. So when there is a situation that may appear to be dangerous, that may appear unsafe, and fear starts to rise up, that's when you need courage. So it's not that there is no fear, it's that you feel the fear and you do it anyway. Courage means that you will move forward, that you will do what you need to do, even if it's uncomfortable. And I'm talking unsafe, uncomfortable, on any level, right? It doesn't have to be lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. It could be fear that somebody's going to laugh at you. It could be fear that this person won't approve. It could be fear that you may try and try again but not succeed. But courage says that yes, you can acknowledge the fear because you feel what you feel, right? And we don't need to ignore it. Courage says, I acknowledge that that fear is there, but I'm going to do it anyway. That fear doesn't control me. The Bible says that God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. So the fear is there, but we still just persevere. Since we're talking about the Bible, I want to bring up Moses. So we know Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt. Most people are not aware that Moses had what people would call a speech impediment. The King James Version says that he was slow of speech. God will sometimes use the most unlikely people to achieve his purpose and his goals. So he's going to take someone with a speech impediment to lead all of these people out of Egypt, to have to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. That he would take someone like me who had a noticeable speech impediment, and I believe that I will speak to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And I just say, to God be the glory, because it wasn't until I became a Christian and I really understood how God used Moses, and I understood that God could heal me, and I prayed and I asked God to deliver me from the stutter. It wasn't until then that I could truly have the confidence to go forward and to speak in front of so many people. When God first called Moses, it's like Moses couldn't believe it. He thought he was disqualified for several reasons. Of course, God knew all about his weaknesses before he called him. Like, God knew everything about me before he told me that I would speak to women and I would help them to love themselves and to take care of themselves and to live the life of their dreams with no regrets. God already knew whatever issues that I had, whether they were real or they were in my mind. God knows me, and yet he decided to use me anyway. So if you're thinking that you have maybe done some things in your past, or maybe you have some things going on in your body that will stop you, that would hinder you from doing those things that you were created to do, know this, that God already knew, and that anything that you have been called to do, you have also been equipped. And there is nothing that will disqualify you from God's purpose. So sometimes people think I'm too old, I waited too late. God knows how old you are. Abraham and Sarah thought they were too old. And yet he made Abraham the father of many nations. So just because it doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean that it can't happen. You are not too old. Do not count yourself out. Go for your dreams. If you believe that this is what you are called to do, then you need to go for it, regardless of your age or your education, right? What side of the tracks? I don't know if people still say that, but whatever side of the tracks you come from, whoever your parents were, whether you've been divorced or you've never been married or you were a single parent, none of that matters when it comes to you fulfilling your purpose. Okay, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter because I don't want to minimize the way you feel, because it will have the importance that you give it. So if you think, I'm going to talk about people who are divorced. I thought that when I got divorced, I wouldn't be able to serve in ministry anymore, that I wouldn't be able to speak to women like this. So it was like in my mind to, once I got a divorce, I was damaged goods and I just needed to play some small role somewhere if someone would let me. But once I had a change of heart, a change of perspective, and I could see myself the way that God sees me, then I knew that yes, I still have a purpose, that God still has a plan for me. So friend, I want to say to you, you're not too old. It's not too late. There is nothing that you have done that God won't forgive. Ask for forgiveness, ask for His help, ask for His guidance so He can lead you to accomplish the things that He has for you. He knows the plans and the purpose that He has for you. Plans to do you good, plans to give you an expected end. So I'm going to say, whatever you think disqualifies you, it doesn't. So for me, one of the things that I thought disqualified me was a stutter. But for you, what is it? Your thing probably has nothing to do with speaking. Maybe your thing is fear of rejection, or your divorce, or your age. Maybe it's your weight and you think, once I lose 30 pounds, that's when I'll really be able to do something. Maybe it's fear of being seen or fear of criticism. Maybe it's something that somebody said to you years ago, whether it was a bully or a teacher or a parent, a cousin. Maybe somebody said something to you years ago and you chose to believe them. And because they said this thing, that completely changed your course. What's the story that you have been telling yourself that has been keeping you small? What are those whispers that says that you can't do this? Not people like you can't do this. Somebody else could, but not you. So think about one thing that fear has been stopping you from doing. And then take an action, right? But even as you're taking that action, I talked more about scripture in this video than I plan to. So since I'm on a roll, let's just stay there for a minute. The scriptures that were really important to me: Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, and that the same power that raised Jesus up from the dead dwells on the inside of me. If I have resurrection power on the inside of me, then I can overcome any impediment. I can overcome any sickness, any disease, any fear, anything that would try to keep me from the will of God. Those two scriptures, they were enough for me and they are enough for me right now. You don't even have to know the whole Bible. Find you one or two scriptures that you can hold on to that can let you know that God is with you. That God is with you. God is on your side. He's fighting your battles. And it's so exciting to know that you do not have to do this alone. I have to go into the battle, it's one thing for me to go into a battle by myself, but it's another thing for me to go with Almighty God. So this week, take one courageous step toward your goal. Take one courageous step toward your purpose. Complete the application. Apply for the job. Sign up for the class. Set the boundary. Record the video. Go somewhere by yourself. Go and have dinner alone and enjoy your company. Get clear about what you really want and tell someone about it. And take action. Start before you feel like you're ready. For years, I hid my voice because of fear. But now I know that my voice is one of God's greatest gifts, because what the things that He has called me to do requires that I speak. So the thing that used to really hold me back, that is the thing that I'm using now to fulfill my purpose and to maximize my potential. So maybe your thing is different from mine and it's not a stutter. But we all have something that would try to keep us in fear. So the question is, will you continue to allow fear to make your decisions? Or will you walk in faith, knowing that you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you? So as you think about it, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And let's do that thing. I am so excited about that. I have a group coaching cohort that is coming up really soon. You can reach out and talk to me. There's a link in the description below where you can schedule what I call a next chapter conversation. We can look at where you are now and what your goals are and whether the cohort would be a good fit for you. If this video resonated with you, then I believe that these videos right here will help you to go to your next level. Until next time, be blessed.